you ever wondered how a life can change in a split second? How everything you know can be ripped away, leaving you only with a question that haunts your thoughts? What now? It's a rainy evening, the kind where the world outside feels blurred, as if even nature is mourning something it knows is coming. A young professional, vibrant, always on the go, racing against time in a life full of meetings, deadlines, and ambition. But then, in the blink of an eye, boom, everything shifts. One moment, they're caught up in the rush of their day, the hum of the car engine in their ears, the world moving fast outside the window. And the next, crash, a violent twist of fate. Screeching tires, metal crunching, glass shattering, the air filled with panic, chaos, and then absolute silence. It's a moment of agony, the feeling of being trapped, unable to move, unable to breathe. The young professional lies there, helpless, their body broken. A scream for help rises, but it's swallowed by the pain. But there's no answer, only the sound of sirens rushing closer. And when the dust settles, when the chaos fades, it's not the car that's damaged the most. It's the body, the future, the life that has just been stolen away. The doctor's words are hollow. "You may never walk again," they say. Those words, those sharp, cold words, cut deeper than the physical injuries. It's not just the loss of mobility, it's the loss of independence, the loss of a life once lived at full speed, and the emotional wound. It's so much worse. But there's something else, something unexpected. Rusty, the golden retriever, the loyal companion, the one who'd always been there with a wagging tail and soft eyes, suddenly becomes more than just a dog. He becomes the only anchor in a sea of uncertainty. As the young professional struggles to adapt to their new reality, it's Rusty who stays by their side, never leaving them, offering solace in every gaze. And yet, it's not all as it seems. Just as the dust settles and the owner begins to depend on Rusty more and more, something strange begins to happen. The dog, the one who's been a source of comfort, is changing. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, but the owner notices it. Rusty is no longer the same. Something is off. Why would a dog, so full of love, suddenly turn its back on the person it's always protected? Why would a dog, whose very essence is loyalty, start to pull away when its owner needs it most? Something doesn't make sense, but it's real. Rusty's behavior begins to unravel, and with it, the owner's hope. Every question that crosses the owner's mind only leads to more confusion. What's happening to the dog? Why is it acting so distant? And what is Rusty sensing that the owner can't? This isn't just a story of recovery anymore. It's a mystery, a question of loyalty, of trust, of what lies beneath the surface. As the emotional weight settles in, the question remains: what has changed? As the days stretch on after the accident, the once bright, bustling world of the owner has shrunk to the small, quiet space of their home. There are no more busy workdays, no more hurried commutes, just endless moments of stillness, punctuated by the overwhelming sense of loss. But in this silence, there's Rusty. Rusty, the golden retriever, whose presence has become more than just that of a pet. He is a lifeline, a tether to the life that once was, and the hope for something that still might be. Rusty has always been a companion, but now, more than ever, he is a constant, never leaving the owner's side, always just a few steps away. The dog, who once bounded energetically from room to room, now moves more slowly, quietly, sensing the shift in the air. His once vibrant, playful demeanor has mellowed into something far deeper. Rusty seems to understand that his role has changed. He's no longer just a pet, he's a protector, a friend. A quiet, unwavering presence that gives the owner something to hold on to. The owner may struggle with their new physical limitations, but Rusty never falters. In the mornings, when the weight of the day seems too heavy to bear, Rusty is the first to greet them, his tail wagging softly, his eyes full of understanding. He follows them through every movement, his presence a reminder that no matter how different things are now, they are not truly alone. When the owner feels defeated by the smallest of tasks, getting out of bed, moving to the kitchen, or even simply sitting up, Rusty is right there, never judging, always offering silent encouragement. He lies down beside them at night, pressing his warm body against theirs, as if to remind them that they still matter, that they are still seen. Rusty becomes the owner's anchor, the constant that ties them to a sense of normalcy. No words are needed. It's the gentle touch of his paw on their leg, the quiet gaze he gives as they sit in the sun, the rhythmic sound of his breathing as they drift off to sleep. Every movement Rusty makes is an affirmation. You're not alone in this. You're not forgotten. But still, as the days turn to weeks and the weeks to months, a small seed of doubt begins to sprout within the owner. It's the way Rusty's eyes occasionally linger on them, as if something is amiss. Something the dog can't quite understand, but senses all the same. The bond between them is strong, but even the strongest relationships can carry an undercurrent of uncertainty, and Rusty's ever-watchful gaze starts to stir a feeling of unease. What if things aren't as they seem? What if this bond, so unshakable, starts to fracture? Each day feels like a battle for the owner. The morning light filters through the curtains, but it does little to lift the weight that presses down on their chest. As they begin their day, the once simple tasks now seem insurmountable. The wheelchair, once a symbol of convenience, now feels like an anchor, holding them back from a life they can no longer access. Frustration builds in their chest as they attempt to complete even the smallest of tasks. Brushing teeth, making coffee, or getting dressed. A series of motions that once required little thought now stretch into an agonizing struggle. The world outside seems to move forward without them, and they can't shake the feeling of being left behind. Anger simmers beneath the surface, a bitter feeling of helplessness rising like a storm. Why me? They wonder. Why this? Why now? The weight of the question seems endless. Every answer they try to find only feels hollow, a reminder that the person they once were is slipping further away. Tears fall in moments of weakness, when the anger and sorrow become too much to contain. A deep, aching sorrow settles in, drowning out any hope for the future. But through it all, there's one constant: Rusty. Rusty's presence is quiet, but it is as steady as the beat of a heart. The dog is always there, patiently waiting. As the owner struggles with their emotional roller coaster, Rusty remains an unshakable source of comfort. He doesn't demand anything. He doesn't try to fix the unfixable. He simply stays by the owner's side, his golden fur offering a warmth that feels like the sun on a cold day. Rusty's eyes, always full of understanding, seem to hold no judgment. No matter how much the owner feels they've failed in their daily struggles, Rusty doesn't care. His loyalty never wavers. He is a silent reminder that despite everything, they are still worthy of love, of companionship, of hope. In the mornings, when the weight of the world feels impossible to carry, Rusty curls up beside the owner, his head resting gently on their lap. The simple act of his presence is enough to ground them, offering solace in the quiet moments. No words are needed. Rusty doesn't need to understand everything. He just needs to be there. And in that, the owner finds a glimmer of peace. But deep inside, the question still lingers. Can they ever find a way back to themselves? Can they reclaim the life they once knew? And, more terrifyingly, will Rusty always be there? Or will the bond between them fray in ways they can't yet understand? As the days slip into a routine, something subtle begins to shift in Rusty. He's always been protective, always by the owner's side, but now it's different, intensified, almost to a point of obsession. The protective instinct that once existed as a quiet background hum now becomes a constant force, pulling him closer to the owner in ways that seem almost frantic. The owner, still grappling with their new reality, feels vulnerable in a world they once navigated effortlessly. Simple tasks, once routine, now seem like monumental challenges. The fear of being alone, of not being able to manage, gnaws at them. But every time the owner falters, whether it's a sudden burst of pain, a moment of helplessness, or simply struggling to get through the day, Rusty is right there. His presence becomes suffocating at times, as though he's trying to absorb every ounce of fear or discomfort the owner feels. It's the small things at first. When someone else comes over to help, whether it's a nurse, a friend, or a family member, Rusty's behavior shifts. His body stiffens, his eyes narrow, and his once relaxed demeanor turns tense. There's no growl, no obvious sign of aggression, but there's something undeniably unsettling about the way Rusty watches, like a silent guardian ready to step in at the slightest provocation. Whenever anyone tries to help the owner, Rusty becomes more vocal, more insistent, as though saying, "I'm the one who's supposed to be here. I'm the one who takes care of them." His anxious pacing becomes a constant hum in the background, his eyes darting from the owner to the intruder, always alert, always on edge. At first, the owner tries to reassure Rusty. They gently coax him to relax, tell him everything is fine, that they don't need to be protected. But the dog doesn't listen. The bond between them, once built on companionship, has now grown into something more profound. And it's as though Rusty knows that in this new world, he's the last line of defense. Every action the owner makes, reaching for a glass of water, attempting to stand, even the smallest movement, Rusty is there, hovering, as if making sure they don't fall, don't break, don't fail. His eyes never leave them, his presence more overwhelming than comforting. But the question that lingers in the air is unsettling. What is Rusty sensing that the owner cannot see? What has changed that makes the dog act with such urgency, such anxiety? And is this the beginning of a deeper, darker twist to their bond, one the owner isn't yet ready to confront? One morning, the tension in the air feels heavier than usual. The sun barely breaks through the curtains, casting a soft, almost surreal glow across the room. But something is different today. The calmness of the space, once reassuring, now feels unsettling. Rusty, the ever-present companion, is nowhere to be found. The owner scans the room, searching for the familiar golden fur, but there's nothing. They call out softly, "Rusty?" The dog's ears perk up, but instead of bounding over, tail wagging as usual, Rusty merely lifts his head from the corner, his gaze distant, almost detached. The owner's heart skips a beat. This is not like him. Rusty slowly gets to his feet, but he doesn't approach. Instead, he circles the room as if there's something invisible occupying the space. He's restless, pacing in tight, nervous circles, his eyes darting around the room. The owner reaches out, trying to call him closer, but Rusty hesitates, giving a soft whine before turning his back and moving further away. It's subtle at first, but it's enough to create a growing knot of unease in the owner's chest. "Rusty, come on," they plead, but the dog's response is a strange stillness. No tail wag, no movement towards them. Rusty curls up in a corner of the room, his back turned as though intentionally creating space between them. The owner, confused, tries to shrug it off. He's probably just tired. They mutter to themselves, but the nagging feeling in the pit of their stomach refuses to fade. That night, Rusty doesn't curl up beside them as he always does. The bed feels colder without his comforting weight. The absence is more noticeable than ever, and the emptiness gnaws at the owner. They lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what's changed. What happened to the dog who was always by their side, who never let them feel alone? The next few days bring the same behavior. Rusty refuses to sleep on the bed, avoids eye contact, and seems distracted, like his mind is somewhere else. Each time the owner tries to draw him near, Rusty pulls away, his movements cautious, almost fearful. The confusion grows with each passing hour. What's going on? The owner wonders, their mind racing. This isn't just a phase, it feels different. It's as though something's shifting, something unseen, but deeply felt. The once unbreakable connection is starting to fray, and the owner can't help but feel a creeping dread. What is Rusty sensing that they can't see? What's behind this sudden distance? And most of all, why is the dog, who has always been their protector, now pulling away? Days blur together, the weight of confusion and loneliness pressing down on the owner. The once simple and comforting act of coming home to Rusty's eager greeting is now a painful reminder of what's slipping away. Rusty no longer rushes to the door when the owner returns home. The familiar sound of paws patting on the floor, the warm, enthusiastic wag of a tail. Those moments are gone, replaced with an emptiness that cuts deeper than the physical injury. Each time the owner enters, they search for the golden fur, the familiar gleam in Rusty's eyes. But now the dog remains distant, lying in the far corner of the room, eyes half closed, as though he's not really seeing anything. The owner's calls fall on deaf ears, their voice laced with a quiet desperation, but Rusty doesn't respond. He doesn't get up, doesn't even look over. The distance between them grows, and the owner's heart sinks lower each time. It's not just the lack of enthusiasm anymore, it's the way Rusty actively avoids them. When called, the dog doesn't approach as he always did. Instead, Rusty stands up slowly, hesitates, and then walks away, his movements slow and deliberate. His back turned, he looks distant, as if the bond they shared has somehow become invisible, slipping away like sand through fingers. The owner tries to coax him closer, extending a hand, a soft call, even a gentle whisper of reassurance. But nothing works. Rusty simply ignores them, his gaze far away, as if lost in some far-off world where the owner no longer exists. The hurt grows with every ignored call, every silent moment that stretches into hours. The emotional anchor that once held everything together has disappeared, leaving only a deep, unshakable void. The loneliness becomes suffocating. The owner feels abandoned by the one being that once gave them a sense of purpose, a sense of normalcy, in a life that had already been turned upside down. The pain of being alone is now sharper than ever, but worse still is the growing realization that the one creature who was supposed to be their comfort has drifted away. What has happened? They wonder. Why is Rusty, my protector, now avoiding me? The air feels heavy with the unspoken tension, and the owner's mind races with fear and confusion. Is it them? Or is there something Rusty knows, something they can't see, something that has driven the dog to pull away? The questions gnaw at them, but the silence remains. As the days drag on, the sense of isolation deepens for the owner. What began as a subtle shift in Rusty's behavior has now turned into a painful reality. The once inseparable bond between them is weakening, and the owner's heart aches with every ignored call, every time Rusty turns away. The owner tries to maintain hope, telling themselves that Rusty's strange behavior is just a phase, a temporary retreat from the emotional strain that both of them have been under. But as each day passes, that hope fades, replaced by growing anxiety. The dog's distance is not just physical, it feels emotional, as though the connection they once shared has slipped through their fingers like water. They call out to Rusty again, their voice wavering with uncertainty. "Rusty, come here, boy." But this time, there's no response. The dog, curled up in the farthest corner of the room, doesn't even lift his head. The silence stretches on, suffocating and endless. The owner tries to get closer, slowly wheeling their chair to where Rusty lies, extending their hand toward the dog. But Rusty doesn't move. His eyes, once full of love and understanding, are now distant, unfocused, as if they're seeing something the owner can't. The more the owner calls out, the more it feels like they're reaching for something they can't quite grasp. They try different approaches, offering treats, calling Rusty's name in a soft, coaxing tone, even trying to mimic the playful commands that used to get the dog's attention. But it's as if the dog is in another world, a place the owner cannot reach. A wave of panic crashes over them. Has our bond truly been broken? The question stings, harder than the physical pain from the accident itself. For so long, Rusty had been their rock, their companion through the darkest times. But now it feels like that rock has eroded, leaving only an empty space where once there was security. The more the owner tries to close the gap, the more it seems to widen. Desperation gnaws at them, and with it comes the fear that maybe, just maybe, this isn't a phase. Maybe Rusty's behavior is a sign of something deeper, something the owner isn't ready to face. What has happened? They wonder. What did I do? What went wrong? The bond that once defined their relationship now seems as fragile as glass, and the owner can't help but fear it may shatter completely. Desperation pushes the owner to act. With each day that Rusty pulls further away, a knot of worry tightens in their chest. No matter what they try, nothing seems to change. The once dependable dog has turned into a mystery, a puzzle with no solution. After days of confusion, the owner reaches out for help. They can't bear the feeling of helplessness any longer. They visit the vet, clinging to a small thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, the explanation lies somewhere in the professional's hands. As they sit in the sterile waiting room, the owner feels a mixture of anticipation and dread. They long for answers, but a small voice in the back of their mind whispers, "What if there are no answers? What if the bond between us is truly broken?" When they finally sit across from the vet, they pour out their concerns. The vet listens carefully, nodding as the owner explains how Rusty has changed, how he's withdrawn, avoided contact, and acted strangely. The owner's voice trembles with frustration and confusion, desperate for a solution. The vet examines Rusty thoroughly, checking his body for any signs of illness, looking for anything that might explain the behavior. Rusty's coat is shiny, his eyes clear, and his body shows no signs of physical distress. To the vet, everything seems normal. There's no illness, no injury, nothing that could explain why Rusty is acting this way. The owner feels their heart sink as the vet finishes the examination. Physically, he's fine. the vet says, offering no real explanation. But sometimes, dogs can sense things we can't. Emotional shifts, changes in energy, or even the environment can affect them. The words don't land like a relief. Instead, they feel like another layer of uncertainty. Is this it? The owner wonders. Is there something Rusty is sensing, something I can't see? The vet suggests that Rusty might be reacting to the owner's emotional state, picking up on the stress, the sorrow, the confusion that hangs thick in the air. It's not an illness, but perhaps a shift in the emotional climate that's making Rusty uneasy. The owner listens, but the answer does little to ease the growing unease. They leave the clinic with no real answers, only more questions. What is happening to them? What is Rusty sensing that they can't? And what does it mean for their bond if the only explanation is something so intangible, so beyond their control? The road ahead feels even more uncertain now, and the owner is left with a feeling of cold dread. As the days pass, the tension only intensifies. Rusty's behavior grows more erratic, more unpredictable. The once steady presence of the dog, calm, loyal, ever by the owner's side, seems to be unraveling. At night, something changes in the air. It's as if the very house itself has become a different place, a place where shadows lurk and the familiar seems foreign. The first sign comes quietly one evening. As the owner sits in the living room, attempting to relax, Rusty suddenly stands up, ears perked, and stares at the corner of the room. There's nothing there, nothing visible to the human eye, but Rusty's body is stiff, his eyes locked onto a spot that seems insignificant, just an empty space. The hair on the back of the dog's neck stands on end, and a low growl vibrates in his chest. The owner, confused, calls out to him. "Rusty? What is it?" But the dog doesn't respond. Instead, he backs away slowly, refusing to take another step toward the corner. The unsettling behavior doesn't stop there. Night after night, it's the same pattern. Rusty barks at shadows, his barking sharp and urgent, his tail straight and rigid, as if something unseen is stirring just out of reach. His barks echo through the house, but there's no source to his agitation, nothing the owner can see. The dog growls low, pacing restlessly, refusing to settle down. When the owner tries to calm him, Rusty backs away, his eyes wide with fear, watching the space around him with distrust. The owner feels a creeping sense of unease. They've always known Rusty to be an alert dog, but this is different. It's as though the dog is seeing something they cannot. With every passing night, the feeling grows stronger. The feeling that there is something in the house, something hidden in the corners, something that only Rusty can sense. Is it possible? Is there an unseen threat, some presence that the owner is blind to? The idea seems far-fetched, but the mounting evidence begins to sway the owner's thoughts. Is the house haunted? Is there something more to Rusty's strange behavior than just emotional stress? The questions gnaw at them, but the answers remain just out of reach. Rusty's instincts are sharper than ever, but they're no longer reassuring. With every bark, every growl, the fear grows, both in the owner and in Rusty. What is this unseen force that's pushing them further apart? What is Rusty sensing that they can't? The feeling of danger creeps closer, and the sense of safety that once filled the house begins to slip away. The strange behavior continues to escalate, and the owner is now trapped in a web of confusion and fear, unable to make sense of Rusty's increasingly unsettling actions. There's no rational explanation for what's happening, yet every new day brings more signs, more oddities that are impossible to ignore. One morning, as sunlight filters through the blinds, the owner notices Rusty sitting by the window, his body stiff and unmoving. The dog's gaze is fixed, his eyes locked onto something outside the house, something the owner can't see. Rusty's posture is rigid, his tail still. It's as if the dog is watching something with intense focus, waiting for it to move, to make a sound, but nothing happens. The stillness in the room feels thick, almost suffocating, as the owner watches in silence, wondering what has gripped the dog's attention. As the hours pass, Rusty doesn't move from the window. He doesn't get up to eat, doesn't respond when the owner calls him. He simply stays there, staring. The owner feels a chill creep down their spine. What is he looking at? What does he know that I don't? The confusion intensifies when Rusty suddenly lets out a soft whine, a low sound that's unlike anything the owner has heard before. It's not the usual whimper of longing or distress. It's more like a plea, a quiet request. The dog's eyes flicker back and forth between the outside world and the owner, but there's no clarity in what he's trying to communicate. It's as if the dog is struggling to tell the owner something vital, something urgent, but the words are locked behind a barrier the owner can't cross. The owner approaches, kneeling beside Rusty and trying to understand, trying to make sense of the message. But the dog's eyes remain distant, his gaze filled with a sense of sorrow that pierces deeper than any words could. Another whine escapes his throat, a sound tinged with frustration, as if Rusty knows the owner can't fully grasp the meaning. The unspoken tension grows, and with each passing day, Rusty's silent communication becomes more pronounced. He spends long hours at the window, staring out at the unknown, as if something is just beyond reach. His body language is pleading, desperate, yet the owner still can't figure out what Rusty is trying to convey. The dog's distress has become a riddle, and every attempt to solve it only adds to the mounting uncertainty. What is Rusty trying to tell them? Why is he so focused on the outside world, so intent on conveying a message they can't understand? The questions swirl, unanswered, as the feeling of something sinister grows stronger. Days stretch on in an agonizing silence, each one feeling heavier than the last. The owner watches helplessly as Rusty continues to withdraw, the bond that once anchored their soul now slipping through their fingers like sand. At first, it was just a subtle shift, an odd look, a brief moment of distance. But now, it's undeniable. Rusty is pulling away, and with every day that passes, the owner feels the weight of that rejection more and more. The dog's avoidance cuts deeper than anything the owner has faced since the accident. The physical pain of their disability is one thing, but the emotional toll of losing Rusty, the one constant, the one source of unconditional love, is something far more agonizing. The once constant companionship, the presence that had always brought comfort, now feels like a cruel reminder of something lost. Rusty no longer greets the owner with his wagging tail. Shoes no longer curls up beside them in bed at night. Instead, he hides in corners, keeps his distance, and looks at the owner with an unfamiliar detachment that stings like 1,000 needles. The isolation is suffocating. The house feels empty, devoid of the life and energy that Rusty once brought into it. Every moment is a stark reminder that they are alone, that even the dog, the one creature who was supposed to stand by them, has turned away. The owner tries to coax Rusty back, offering treats, calling his name in a voice that cracks with emotion, but nothing changes. The dog simply looks away, the gap between them widening with every failed attempt. With each passing day, the feeling of rejection seeps deeper into the owner's soul. What did I do wrong? Why won't he come back to me? The questions echo relentlessly in their mind, gnawing at their self-worth. They wonder if they're no longer worthy of Rusty's love, if their disability has made them less than who they were before. The familiar warmth that Rusty once provided is now replaced with a cold emptiness that's impossible to ignore. The loneliness becomes unbearable, a crushing weight that seems to settle on their chest with every breath. The absence of Rusty's companionship becomes a mirror, reflecting the owner's darkest thoughts and fears. The owner is no longer just struggling with their physical limitations, but with a profound sense of loss. And with that loss comes the terrifying realization: am I truly alone? The feeling of isolation grows, and with it, the heartbreaking thought that maybe, just maybe, the bond between them has truly broken. The evening starts like any other, the soft hum of the rain tapping against the windows, the low rumble of distant thunder that seems far enough away to be a background noise rather than an immediate threat. But as the storm grows closer, something shifts in the air. The wind picks up, the house creaks with the increasing pressure, and the once peaceful atmosphere turns tense. The first flash of lightning splits the sky, casting a brief but blinding light through the windows. That's when Rusty, who has been unusually calm all day, suddenly snaps. His body goes rigid, his fur standing on end. He stares at the door, then whips his head around the room, ears straining. The air around them feels charged, electric, and the dog begins to bark, sharp, frantic, high-pitched, as though he's seeing something the owner can't. The barking echoes through the house, unnerving and insistent, rising in volume with each second. The owner, confused and unsettled by the sudden change in behavior, calls to Rusty. "Rusty, what is it? What's wrong?" But the dog doesn't acknowledge them. His gaze is fixed, his body tense, and he continues to bark, each bark more desperate than the last. The owner feels a rush of fear surge through them. This isn't just the typical response to a storm. Rusty isn't scared of the thunder or the lightning. He's acting as though something is threatening them both, something invisible and dangerous. Then, to the owner's shock, Rusty takes a few steps back, positioning himself between the owner and the room, as if to shield them from some unseen threat. His eyes dart around, never settling, never resting. His growls grow louder, and the owner feels a strange chill creep up their spine. The dog's protective instinct has gone into overdrive, but what exactly is he protecting them from? The room is empty, the windows are locked, and the storm outside seems like the only disturbance. The thunder crashes louder, but the barking doesn't stop. Rusty's panic reaches a peak, his whole body trembling with fear and urgency. The owner's heart races as they try to make sense of it. Is it the storm? Is Rusty seeing something I can't? The fear in the dog's eyes seems to speak of something far deeper, something the owner can't quite understand. The dog's frantic behavior, the way he's positioning himself between the owner and nothing at all, causes the owner to question everything. Am I losing my mind? They wonder. Or is there truly something here that I can't see? The uncertainty looms like a shadow, and as the storm rages outside, the feeling of dread inside the house only deepens. What is real? What is happening? And why is Rusty so certain of an unseen danger? Storm rages on outside, the deafening cracks of thunder shaking the walls. But inside, the house is filled with a profound silence, broken only by Rusty's frantic barking. The tension in the air is thick, and the owner's heart is pounding in their chest. Rusty, who has been their faithful companion for so long, is acting in a way they can't understand. The dog's behavior is no longer just strange, it's terrifying. He seems to be protecting the owner from something unseen, something that is clearly stirring up an intense reaction in him. The owner, shaking with fear, watches as Rusty continues to circle them, his body tense, his eyes darting between the owner and the empty space around them. The barking suddenly stops, but the growling continues, deep and resonant, a sound that seems to vibrate through the floor. The dog's gaze is fixated on a corner of the room, where the shadows seem to shift unnaturally in the flickering lightning. The owner's mind races as they try to understand what is happening. What's wrong with Rusty? What is he sensing? Then it hits them, like a sudden flash of clarity. Rusty isn't avoiding them. He isn't turning away because he's angry or upset. He's trying to protect them from something the owner can't see. The dog isn't reacting to a physical threat. Instead, it's as though he's aware of an emotional presence, a lingering darkness that the owner has been trying to ignore. The house, once a place of comfort, now feels suffocating. The memories that had been buried in the corners of the owner's mind begin to resurface, clawing their way to the forefront of their thoughts. A surge of realization floods the owner's chest. The accident, the trauma they experienced, has left more than just physical scars. The emotional weight of what happened, the feelings of helplessness and fear, have seeped into the very walls of the house. Rusty, with his sharp instincts, has been sensing this pain, this unresolved trauma that the owner has been too afraid to confront. The dog's protective behavior wasn't just about shielding them from an invisible force. It was his way of trying to help the owner face what had been haunting them all along. The realization is both terrifying and freeing. For the first time, the owner understands that it isn't just the dog who has been suffering. They, too, have been carrying the weight of something they haven't been able to face. And now, with Rusty's unwavering loyalty, they are finally being forced to confront the darkness they've been avoiding. The storm outside begins to die down, but the emotional storm within the owner's heart is just beginning. The realization hits hard. Rusty hasn't been avoiding them out of anger or frustration. The dog's strange behavior was a desperate attempt to shield the owner from something unseen, something deep within. But now, as the storm outside fades into a dull hum, a new storm brews inside the owner's heart. The emotional distance between them and their beloved dog feels insurmountable. The bond that once seemed unbreakable now feels fragile, like a thin thread that could snap with the slightest touch. The owner feels the weight of their own pain, the trauma from the accident, the emotional scars that have never been fully addressed. The realization that Rusty has been sensing this turmoil, this fear, is both a relief and a burden. It means that the dog's loyalty has never wavered. But it also means that the distance between them is not just physical. It's emotional, rooted in the unspoken pain that neither of them has fully confronted. With a trembling hand, the owner reaches out to Rusty, their voice thick with emotion. "Rusty, I'm sorry. I've been so lost in my own fear and pain that I didn't see how much you've been carrying too. Please, come back to me." Their words tremble, raw with the vulnerability of admitting their own helplessness. They've always been the one who cared for Rusty, the one who protected him. But now, in this moment of truth, they realize that it's Rusty who has been carrying them through this darkness all along. But despite the plea, Rusty doesn't move. His body remains stiff, his eyes distant. He's still guarding the same corner, still wary of something the owner can't see. The emotional gap between them feels wider than ever. The owner tries again, this time more desperately. "Please, Rusty, I need you. I don't know how to heal without you by my side. I'm scared." The dog doesn't respond, but his body softens slightly, a subtle sign that he's hearing the owner's words. But the space between them remains, a space that's filled with pain, confusion, and fear. The emotional tension is palpable, and with every attempt to reach out, the owner feels the gap growing wider. They understand now that healing will not come easily, that the bond they once shared needs time to rebuild, to bridge the distance that has grown between them. But with each attempt, the owner feels the flicker of hope return. They don't know if Rusty will come back to them in the way they long for, but they know that this struggle, this emotional confrontation, is the first step toward healing. And maybe, just maybe, they'll find their way back to each other. One step at a time. For days, the emotional rift between the owner and Rusty deepens. Every attempt to reconnect seems to fall short, and the distance between them feels more like an insurmountable chasm than an emotional struggle. The owner's heart aches, the pain of seeing Rusty withdraw gnawing at them relentlessly. But just when it feels like hope is slipping away entirely, something shifts. It's a quiet evening. No storm this time, just the soft hum of the world outside and the steady ticking of a clock on the wall. Rusty has been particularly distant all day, pacing in tight circles and staring off into corners. But tonight feels different. The owner sits, as they often do now, alone in the living room. Their mind is a whirlwind of thoughts and questions about Rusty, about themselves, about the accident that started all of this. A sense of helplessness lingers, but it's mingled with a quiet desperation. "I have to find a way back to him," the owner thinks. "He's my only anchor." Then, out of nowhere, Rusty reacts. The dog, who has been lying on the far side of the room, suddenly stiffens. His body goes rigid, his eyes narrowing, fixated on something the owner cannot see. His tail stands straight, and he slowly rises to his feet, his entire demeanor shifting. There's no growl, no bark, just the unmistakable energy of a protector in action. Rusty moves with purpose, placing himself between the owner and a shadow in the corner of the room. His eyes never leave that spot, his posture defensive and alert. The owner watches, their breath catching in their throat. They follow the dog's gaze, but there's nothing there. No shadow, no physical threat. But then it hits them. Rusty isn't responding to an external danger. He's sensing something far deeper. He's not guarding the owner from a person or a thing. He's guarding them from their own pain. The shadow in the corner is not a physical threat. It's the emotional trauma from the accident, the fear and helplessness that have been silently tormenting the owner since that fateful day. The owner's heart races as the realization floods in. The trauma, buried deep within them, has taken on a life of its own, and Rusty has been trying to shield them from it. The owner had been unaware of just how much their unresolved fear had seeped into their daily life, how it had become an invisible presence that hung heavy in the air. But now, in this powerful moment, Rusty's protective instincts are not just about shielding them from external threats. They are about helping the owner face the very thing they've been avoiding all along. As the dog stands firm, still watching the corner, the owner takes a deep breath, finally understanding. Rusty isn't just trying to protect them from the outside world. He's trying to protect them from the part of themselves they haven't been able to confront. The bond between them, fragile as it may be, is still there. stronger than ever in this moment of clarity. And for the first time in weeks, the owner feels the faintest glimmer of hope that, with Rusty's help, they might just begin to heal. With Rusty standing as the unwavering protector, something begins to shift within the owner. The protective instinct of the dog had opened a door, one that had been tightly shut for far too long. Rusty wasn't just trying to shield the owner from an invisible threat. He had been pushing them toward the only thing that could truly heal them, facing the emotional trauma that had taken root since the accident. The owner's first steps toward recovery feel daunting, like walking through a fog that never seems to clear. But with each passing day, they realize that they're not alone. Rusty's steady presence is a constant reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is still love to be found. His devotion becomes the thread that pulls the owner through the toughest days. The dog's quiet companionship is a balm to the emotional wounds that run deep. Every morning, when the owner wakes up and feels the weight of their past and their limitations, Rusty is there, nuzzling their hand or lying down beside them, as if saying, "We're in this together." The first real breakthrough comes when the owner decides to seek help. They begin therapy, a slow and painful process of digging into the emotions they had kept hidden. At first, it feels like they're walking in circles, unable to articulate the depth of their pain, unable to face the feelings that had been buried beneath the surface for so long. But Rusty's steady presence in the room, the way he watches them with those understanding eyes, gives the owner the courage to speak, to peel back the layers of fear and sadness that had been keeping them trapped. Physical rehabilitation follows soon after, as the owner works to regain strength, both in their body and in their heart. Every small victory, a step taken, a muscle stretched, a breakthrough in therapy, feels like a triumph. Yet none of it feels complete without Rusty by their side. The dog becomes not just a companion, but a partner in the healing process. His quiet support during the most difficult sessions, his calm demeanor when the owner's body and mind are exhausted, reminds them that they are not alone in this journey. With each passing day, the owner starts to heal. The emotional wounds begin to close, the fear becomes less suffocating, and the connection between them and Rusty deepens. The dog, once a source of protection from the unseen trauma, is now a constant reminder that healing, both emotional and physical, does not happen in isolation. It happens with love, with support, and with the willingness to confront the past. Through it all, Rusty stands as a symbol of hope, guiding the owner toward a future where pain no longer defines them. As the days pass, a quiet transformation begins to take place. The emotional wall that had once divided the owner and Rusty is slowly crumbling, piece by piece. The owner, now more open to their healing process, begins to embrace the emotional and physical work of recovery. And with each step they take toward healing, Rusty's presence becomes not just a comfort, but a reflection of the progress they're making together. It starts with small gestures. Rusty, who had once distanced himself in the face of the owner's pain, begins to inch closer again. At first, he simply lies by their feet, his head resting on their lap with a soft sigh. The familiar warmth of his body against theirs feels like the first rays of sunlight after a long, cold night. Slowly, the dog's distance diminishes, and he returns to the role he once held so effortlessly, being the owner's rock, their constant companion. One evening, as the owner rests on the couch, feeling the physical exhaustion of the day, Rusty climbs up beside them, curling into a tight ball. The dog, once hesitant, now presses his body against the owner's, his head resting gently on their chest. It's a gesture that feels simple, but it speaks volumes. In that moment, the owner can feel the unwavering bond between them, stronger than it had ever been before. Rusty's behavior shifts back to what it once was, affectionate, loving, protective. But now there's an added depth. It's as if the dog, too, has been healed, not just by the physical return of his presence, but by the emotional journey they've both traveled together. Rusty now follows the owner from room to room, never far away, always checking in, always staying close. His tail wags more freely, his eyes shine with warmth and trust, and his body language speaks of a deep contentment. There's no longer the hesitation that once clouded his actions. He has become even more attentive, more in tune with the owner's needs, as though he understands the weight of their shared experience. The owner begins to feel stronger, not just because of their own progress, but because of the undeniable love and affection that Rusty brings. The dog has become a living reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always a flicker of light. With each new day, the bond between them deepens. No longer just a connection born of companionship, but one forged through shared vulnerability and healing. For the first time in a long while, the owner feels like they can breathe easier. The fear that once dominated their life is no longer as suffocating, and as long as Rusty stays close, they know they can face whatever comes next, together. The journey of healing has not been without its setbacks. Even as the owner begins to feel stronger, there are still days when the weight of everything, of the accident, the pain, and the fear, becomes too much to bear. One particular evening, as the shadows grow long and the air grows heavy with uncertainty, the familiar sense of dread sneaks in, creeping into the owner's thoughts like a dark cloud. It starts subtly, a tightness in the chest, a racing heart, the feeling that the walls are closing in. But before the owner can even take a breath to calm themselves, it overwhelms them. Panic. The room spins and the breath catches in their throat as their mind races with memories and what-ifs, spiraling downward into an abyss of anxiety. The world seems too loud, too fast, and the feeling of suffocation presses against their chest, a tidal wave of fear they cannot escape. In that moment, when everything feels like it's unraveling, when the grip of panic seems impossible to fight, Rusty is there. The dog had been lying at the owner's feet, as he so often does, but now he rises, sensing the change in the air. Rusty doesn't hesitate. He immediately moves toward the owner, pressing his warm body against them, his eyes soft but steady. The man's hands tremble, and he clutches the dog's fur, needing something to hold onto, something to ground him in the chaos. Rusty doesn't pull away. Instead, he stays close, letting the owner cling to him, offering comfort without words. Rusty's presence becomes the anchor the owner desperately needs. His rhythmic breathing, his soft warmth, the steady beat of his heart beneath the owner's hand, it all serves as a reminder that they are not alone, even in the darkest moments. The dog doesn't judge or pull away. He simply stays, his calmness a quiet strength that soothes the owner's racing mind. The panic, though not entirely gone, begins to fade like the slow ebbing of a storm. The bond between them, so fragile and yet so unbreakable, is evident in this moment. Rusty, without question, has become the owner's lifeline, the one who understands their pain without needing to hear it. His loyalty is unwavering, his affection constant, and in the face of fear, Rusty's silent presence is enough to restore some semblance of peace. The owner realizes that it's not just healing from physical pain or emotional scars that matters. It's the deep, unspoken connection that has allowed them both to survive the darkest of times. And with Rusty by their side, they know they can face whatever comes next, together. Days had been moving forward slowly, with progress visible in both the physical and emotional healing process. But despite the strides they had made, the owner's world was still fragile, still threatened by the lingering shadows of fear and uncertainty. The night seemed like any other, quiet, peaceful, with just the soft rustling of the wind outside. But the peace was shattered suddenly, the silence broken by a loud crash from the hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. The owner's heart skips a beat, a surge of panic rising in their chest. Their first instinct is to call out, but the words are caught in their throat. It's too late to think. It's the fear that takes over, the fear that has haunted them for months. In that moment of vulnerability, a figure steps into the hallway, dark and threatening, moving closer. The owner's breath quickens, the walls of their world closing in once again. But before the threat can move any closer, there's a sharp bark that echoes through the house. Rusty, without hesitation, springs into action. The dog, whose loyalty had never faltered, now moves with an intensity the owner had never seen before. With a speed and determination that could only come from pure instinct, Rusty positions himself between the owner and the approaching danger. His stance is unyielding, his eyes locked on the intruder with a fierceness that speaks of protection and devotion. The owner watches in stunned silence, the fear momentarily replaced with awe. The intruder hesitates, taken aback by Rusty's fearless display, but Rusty doesn't back down. He growls low, his body tense and ready, standing firm in defense of the owner. The dog's loyalty is unshakable, and in that moment, he proves not only his love, but his role as the protector, the one who will always stand guard, no matter the cost. The intruder, sensing the dog's unwavering determination, makes a swift retreat, disappearing into the night. The house is still again, the danger gone, but the effect of Rusty's heroic act lingers. The owner, shaken but safe, slowly slides down the wall, overwhelmed by the depth of the dog's loyalty. Rusty walks over, his body still tense, but his gaze softens when he sees that the owner is unharmed. The dog lowers his head, pressing gently against the owner's hand, offering the silent comfort that only he can provide. In that moment, the bond between them solidifies in a way that words could never fully capture. Rusty had proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that no matter the obstacles they faced, they would always be there for each other. The love between them wasn't just about companionship. It was about trust, protection, and a bond that could not be broken. And as the owner looks down at their faithful dog, they know, without a doubt, that they are never truly alone. As the days follow the intense and emotional night of Rusty's heroic protection, the owner begins to realize something deep within themselves has changed. The trauma that once felt insurmountable, the pain that seemed to define their every thought, is no longer as suffocating. Rusty, through his unwavering loyalty, has not only guarded them from physical danger, but has helped shield their soul from the darkness that had threatened to consume them. The dog's actions, his courage, and his love have shown the owner what it means to truly heal, not just from the outside, but from the inside as well. Each day, with Rusty by their side, the owner grows stronger, both physically and emotionally. Therapy sessions become more productive, their body more resilient as they push through the recovery process. But it's not just the physical rehabilitation that shifts, it's the mental transformation, the understanding that healing is a journey. And that journey, for the first time in months, feels less lonely. Rusty, now more affectionate than ever, stays close through every step. Whether it's a gentle nudge to remind the owner to keep going, or a quiet, comforting presence during moments of doubt, the dog is there, always by their side. His presence becomes a constant reminder of what they've overcome together, and of what they are capable of facing in the future. The bond between them, once tested by fear and pain, is now unbreakable. What they've shared, the silent understanding, the shared trauma, the love that has never wavered, has only made their connection stronger. The owner no longer sees the world through the lens of their past struggles, but as a place of possibility, a place where love, loyalty, and strength are still alive. One morning, the owner stands on their own for the first time, feeling a rush of accomplishment. Rusty, sensing the shift in the air, approaches and sits beside them, his head tilted slightly in a gesture of pride. The owner reaches down, stroking the dog's fur as they smile through the tears that have become less frequent, but no less meaningful. They are ready for whatever comes next. With Rusty by their side, they know they can face anything, because together, they have already overcome so much. The story concludes not with an end, but with a beginning. A new chapter forged in the strength of love and the unbreakable bond between the owner and their faithful dog. Their journey is far from over, but the owner now faces the world with a renewed sense of hope, knowing that with Rusty's loyalty and love, they are never truly alone. And whatever challenges lie ahead, they will face them together, stronger than ever.